Hi, I'm Tim, welcome to our channel, and thanks for logging on. If you enjoy these videos, do me a favor and subscribe to our YouTube channel right here at Watchbox Reviews. I would really appreciate it, and I promise to update daily. If you love this watch, you can see it, and you can purchase it on our website, thewatchbox.com. And today we are discussing the legendary Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Jumbo, the extra thin, reference 15202ST. Stainless steel and 39mm on my 16cm circumference wrist. You can see two facts. Immortal facts about the Royal Oak. It wears larger than its nominal size, and it is a timeless classic. This is the closest living relative to the original 1972 Gerald Genta 5402 Jumbo, and this represents the generation of the 15202 that was made from the year 2000 through 2011. So we know which generation we're discussing, and we are looking at an H serial number towards the end of that run. Now the timepiece is 39mm in diameter. We'll zoom out a little bit more even, and you can see it is exactly what the nomenclature implies. Extra thin, 8.1mm thick, like a limpet on the wrist. Two ways to measure it, and here's where you see that the watch really is larger than its stated measurement. You can see this down the barrel shot. It's 48.8mm lug-to-lug, but if you include the rigid flare of the bracelet, I can't pull it down any more than that. The expanse across the wrist is a beefy 52.5mm, so I would actually recommend not wearing this watch on a wrist any smaller than 14.5 centimeters circumference, maybe even smaller than 15. 15 might be the lower limit for this watch, despite being a 39. Of course, 16 centimeters circumference, my wrist, I could size it down, but this would be pretty much the limit. This is a watch that wears far larger than the number suggests. Think of it as a 42, and you get the right idea. It is nicely made. You can see everything about the Royal Oak, the magic of high horology finish on steel, which was the hallmark of the original watch, is still present and correct. The bracelet is immaculately executed, so you can see the satin linking across the surface of the primary links, perfectly aligned, and you'll also note that the intermediate links feature polished faces, and these faces are inboard of the bracelet. They're really only visible as you roll it through the light. They're finishing components you can barely see. You'll also note that the bevel along the case band that expands on the lug hoods continues perfectly aligned across the individual links, and the links are constructed with such a tight tolerance that though it's easy to see the diminishing taper, it's actually hard to feel the individual step downs of the bracelet. On the underside, the bracelet is Ergonomic Bliss. You can note that there are big gaps to vent the wrist and avoid pinching skin or pulling hair. And for the sake of sizing, we have removable links that are fixed in place by screws. Now the clasp is a single fold AP logo style. This is one of the clasps from the end of the first generation 15202. You have a single trigger system for closing the clasp, and you can see it's a little bit cantankerous, but it is quite secure when closed, and the system is supple, secure, low in profile. They even curve the AP logo so it arcs around the underside of your wrist. Jumping back to the case, you can see that it features screws to fix the bracelet to the case, and that's always been the way with the Royal Oaks and the offshores. It gives you a little bit more security against droppage and disaster than if those were spring bars. On the crown side, we have a push-down crown. It's not a screw-down like the 15400, although the watch is still 50 meters water resistant. Nevertheless, without a screw-down crown with a 50-meter water resistance, I would say this is more of a tough, splash-resistant watch than a true swimmable watch. Hexagonal design for the crown, and you can see it recapitulates the form of the white gold bolts inside the bezel. The finishing of the bezel and the case is exquisite. As you can see, the character lines of the bezel continue unimpeded all the way through the case and then through the back of the case, which by the way is a single monoblock construction like the original Royal Oak 15202, or I should say 5402. The 15202 is made with a monoblock case, albeit with the display case back on the reverse side. That's why the 15202 is much closer to the 1970s original than, for example, the Nautilus 5711. The 5711 has a multi-part case with a bezel, a mid case, and a case back, all of which can be removed separately. This is built just like the original 5402, albeit with a sapphire inserted into a cutaway into the monoblock case. Now you have the recesses of the white gold bezel bolts. I always mention that when you want to know how much a Royal Oak has been refinished, just look at the bolts. If they're still recessed within the bezel, the answer is very little, if at all. You can see the Grande Tapisserie dial cut on a pantograph. This was the generation of dial that was made by Sternfrère, a Richemont company for Audemars Piguet. After 2012 it was in-house, but for both generations of the dial was cut on a pantograph, which is a 19th century mimicry engine that takes a large template and then carves the pattern of that template into a dial blank. The dial blank here is then blue galvanized, and these had a very high rejection rate, these blue dials, so AP tended to hang on to them as a boutique exclusive. Now you can see this is the first generation 15202 because you have a non-monotone date disc. You have little Arabic numerals outside of the white gold baton style hour indices, and then you have the AP logo at 12 o'clock rather than at 6. That's how you know you're looking at the first generation of the 15202. Now the watch has a little bit of a quirky system for setting the date. Let me see if I can... My nails aren't what they were before I manicured them. You see what I do for you guys? The watch actually features a quick set mechanism that requires you to back through midnight several times. And that is a legacy of a heritage movement. Turning this all over, let's pop this open one more time. You can see the Audemars Piguet ultra thin automatic caliber 2121. It's based on the 1967 JLC 920 Bausch that was designed for AP, Vacheron, and Patek. 36 joules, automatic winding, 40-hour power reserve, beats away at 19,800 vibrations per hour. It does not have a hack seconds or conventional quick set date. What it does have is prodigious pulchritude in that it is entirely hand finished, and the pre-2012 15202s had a far more beautiful freehand engraved, skeletonized, and beveled rotor. You can see the AP logo in a florid font actually engraved into and skeletonized into the golden winding mass. This is exceptional, and it even notes that the mechanism has been adjusted in 5 positions like a chronometer. This is a beautiful movement with mirrored anglage, perfectly aligned Côte de Genève, engine turned perlage on the base plate, black polished screw heads with chamfered slots, that freehand skeletonized and beveled rotor, and then of course you have the remarkable architecture of this movement, which is only 3.05 millimeters thick with the date. It has this full annular winding rotor that arcs up and over the bridges so that the winding mass is actually in the same plane as the bridges to keep the watch thin. And you can see that there's actually a ring that goes all the way around, and that ring prevents the rotor from coming into contact with the bridges and the plates, because there are 4 ruby rollers underneath that ring that goes all the way around. And thus this is a highly unconventional ultra-thin architecture that is now built entirely in-house by Audemars Piguet. Don't let the JLC parentage fool you. This is an all-in-house AP product these days, and JLC has never used the 920 in its own watches. You can see this first generation 15202ST and make it yours on the watch box. Audemars Piguet Jumbo, the 15202 by night.